diving deep into deep conversations here with Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff. I'm your host, Sean Kneese, and today my guest is Pasquale Santoro, also goes by DJ Pitter Pat. He does punk rock DJing on Thursday nights at Auto Shrunken Head in Alphabet City, which is like the Lower East Side. I guess it's kind of the same neighborhood there. And like he plays like old school punk, hardcore punk, and any other genres that are punk related with his DJing. And you've been involved. He's been involved in the punk scene like since like the 80s, right? 80s, 70s.
Late 80s, early 90s.
Nice. And just tell us about yourself and I guess how you first got exposed to punk and like what drew you to it, and I guess what punk means to you, because I feel like it means different things for different people, and like it's not just music, it's also like, you know, it's a lifestyle for a lot of people. It's like and people have different ideologies within it. Like there's not one way to be punk really. Like I feel like there's different ways people identify with it or relate to it.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that coming from a perspective of, you know, where people have come from in their life, it's basically what punk did for you. And what it did for me was, you know, I was coming from a typical R&B pop background, you know, and I discovered punk, you know, in my early adult life, which is late for some people, but it was perfect for me. I don't think I would have embraced it as much if I didn't have some of the knowledge I needed to embrace it, you know. So when I moved out into Manhattan, you know, I was homeless, you know, at first, and it was literally by choice. I needed to get out of where I was, and I was like, you know what? I'm young. I can do this. I can get out of this situation. If I end up homeless, then like I'll work my way out of it. You know, I'm young and I can do this. Well, if I say it wasn't that easy, you know. Things, you know, there were a lot of bad turns. But anyway, during that time, you know, I was meeting a lot of people in Thompson Square Park, and I was being exposed to the music a lot, going to the concerts and everything. And I was learning a lot from, I guess, more of a anarcho perspective, you know, of punk rock. Because back then they were like fighting for like, rent equity. They were trying to fight for like, you know, squatting rights and things like that. And so there was a lot of that involved in it. But what it meant to me though is that, you know, wait, I can actually, you know, I thought to myself, I can actually be here, and I can actually make something of it. So I began writing random things I see, writing, and I eventually put a band together. And I stuck with that band for, you know, almost a decade. And we did, you know, we had our 15 minutes, and we broke up like any other band, you know. Drugs.
What were they called again? I remember, like you told me about them before. I forget what they were called. They had
the name of the band was called Deviant Behavior.
Deviant Behavior. Okay.
Yeah. And it was fun. I got to say, it was one of the best times of my life. And I didn't think it would go as far as it did, but it did. And yeah, a lot of ups and downs, you know. But like I said, it broke apart in the same way that a lot of bands break apart. Significant others and drugs. So, yeah. So what punk meant to me was, you know, I grew up, you know, kind of in a very conservative, you know, African American family, and it's all about going to church, and it's all about like, you know, when you grow up, you get a job, you have kids, you know, and that's pretty much it. And then the cycle repeats itself. And I kept thinking to myself, man, there's got to be more. It's completely unappealing to me, you know. There's got to be more. I got to see more, you know. I want to be involved in something that's different. So tired of like, you know, wanting to be like everybody else, but at the same time trying to be better than everybody else. I'm like, that's what everything was, you know. And I was like, you know what? I don't even want to deal with that. And when I started to get into punk music and culture, I started to realize that people don't generally think about stupid things like that. They're just like, well, who are you? You know? Okay, that's cool. And you move on from there. And so, yeah, it changed my life. So for me, it was a breakaway from like very tight knit values and like sort of like a family situation where like I say, you grow up, you get that job, you have kids, repeat the cycle, and so forth and so forth. So for me, I wanted to break that cycle.
Yeah, not just like be doing something because you're told this is what you're supposed to do, like doing.
Yeah, it's just what everybody
more
does.
Authentic to you, kind of. Yeah.
I mean, not that I have anything against that. It's just that, like, I'm like, there's got to be something more, There's got to be something more than this,
Yeah. And you said I think you said your dad was Italian, your mother was African American. That was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Italian side of my family didn't have much to do with my upbringing, so that's just how it turned out, I don't think that the Italian side of my family liked my father very much. I don't know. Okay. And I think that was something long before I was born, Yeah. So.
Yeah, and did that ever, like, in the punk scene, like, but I guess on average, would you say most of the punk movement you came across was like anti-racist? Did you come across like racist punks or any racism in the punk scene at all? Or
well, I think at that time, if you did, they wouldn't be considered punks. Like anybody, they would be like, well, that's not a punk. We don't know what you are, but like, you definitely got the look, but you ain't got the heart.
Yeah, like even the skinhead movement, I guess, it wasn't originally like a race. It got like hijacked by races, but originally it was like a working class unity.
Oh, absolutely. That's like the biggest part cultural appropriation I've ever seen in my life. Poor bastards. I feel bad. I'm like, they should have fought harder, man. I'm like, I feel like they just let these guys walk all over them, take their movement, take their music, take their look. I'm like, man, beat these guys up or something,
Yeah. But I guess for you, punk, is it mainly a political thing, or is it also like kind of like how you express yourself as an individual? Like it's a
yeah,
like it makes a lot. Yeah.
It's a little. I think it's a little bit of both. Individuality is really important, but as I've gotten older, I've also understand the importance of community as well. Because a lot of, I feel like there hasn't been anything to pass the torch on to, like the kids of the 2000s, the millennials, and the Generation Z. Yeah, they're punk rockers, but there's this disconnect. As where, like, when I was coming up in the punk scene, there was a togetherness between the 70s, 80s, and 90s punks. And then all of a sudden there was this gap, and there was nobody to pass that torch on to. And and that made me realize the importance of community as well as your individuality. Like, I'm not so much to say as myself as being such an individual that I'm willing to step on somebody else's individuality. You know what I'm saying? It's like I do believe in community as well, So yeah, it's an individuality thing. It's a little bit of politics, I think the very statement of being a punk is political, even without making that statement. Without just saying anything, it's political because you're kind of running up against the grain. You're not exactly doing what you've been told to do. You know what I'm saying? So just in that alone, it's already making a statement. So.
Yeah. And would you say that what most people think punk is and like what punk actually is are two different things?
I think the best way to describe punk is what it's not, And at this point, I would look at, I would say it's not pop culture, So it could be anything below, anything, all of the above, except for being pop culture. It's not generally pop culture, even though there is something called pop punk, which to me is like, I don't know. It's like it's like a soup with shit in it or something. I don't know. But I'm like,
it's like taking your own route rather than whatever the popular trend is or the popular.
For the most part, but in and of itself, we still got to admit it's a community. So yeah, 3-chord punk in that leather jacket, it's a uniform in its own way. It's just not pop culture. It's not, in its own way.
And that's why it can take many different forms, have many different sounds. And
right.
And would you say what would you say like it started with? Like what kind of
like influence wise?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you had to say like for American punk rock, by the time the 75 or 76 came out and we started to finally get, when the press called it punk rock, and we started to see that basic 3-chord, you know, progression. I believe that if you would take glam rock and like 60s hard rock, you know, like garage, and you put it together, you'd have your first form of early punk, I think. And I think that's where a lot of that proto punk stuff came from. And you can hear like a lot of that, you know, garage as well as glam put right smack down the middle.
Yeah, and it had kind of like a rockabilly. A lot of it was taking influence from like rockabilly, old like 50s.
Yeah,
and
you'll get that in the 60s sound as well, you know. So yeah, you can see the influence that runs through it, you know. Especially like early bands like the Cramps, like psychobilly bands and things like that, which I think is like a mixture of punk and rockabilly, you know.
So would you say like you're an anarchist, or like anarchism's what you believe in, or like where do your politics?
No, I'm not an anarchist, you know. It's hard. I would say I was a progressive, you know, at best. You know, I have progressive values. I don't believe in anarcho-punk. I mean, like I said, it's up to what people believe. I've seen people put like, you know, that anarchy symbol, and then right next to it equals, and then it has a peace symbol, and I'm like, well, I beg to differ, you know, or like I'll see like, you know, for me it would be more like an anarchy symbol equal, and then the arrows of chaos. To me, that's more realistic.
Because I was thought like anarchy was more like no rules. It was just like just no rulers, like nobody's above anybody, no hierarchy.
Oh yeah, well I mean it sounds great on paper, you know.
Yeah.
It sounds wonderful on paper, you know. And I'm like, well, that's great, you know. But I'm like, you know, even in a squat, even the most anarcho squat, they sit down together, and the majority of people sit down and figure out what they want to do the next day, how they want the building to be fixed. If you go into a squat and you don't contribute, you'll probably be kicked out. Why? Because they have some kind of rules, and that's what it is, you know.
So they kind of make like their own. You found that when you were hanging around with like people squatting in like abandoned places, I guess they choose, or what?
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, sometimes they have their own like councils, you know, and the people who've been there the longest usually have the most say. You know. That's what I've noticed, and I'm like, there's nothing wrong with that. Without it, it would probably be all over the place, you know.
So you think there needs to be some kind of like structure, some kind of hierarchy in some way?
Some type of structure, put it that way. You know, if you want to call it a hierarchy, you can call it a hierarchy. But I would imagine that a group of people do have to make decisions on what happens, or else you just have people going in and out, in and out, in and out, and you never know what's happening.
And would you say that punk, like, the scene's changed a lot, and like New York is mainly the scene you've been involved in, right? Like, because I know, like,
yeah, it's
like,
mostly New York.
I think UK, and probably like UK and New York was like the two big centers of like the early punk again.
Right.
Like,
until the 90s, and after that it was Berlin.
Okay. Yeah. So would you say it's changed a lot, like the city and the scene and everything since?
It's changed drastically. You can barely recognize it anymore. It really is. I mean, I remember seeing like, you know, I seen like a joke map. It was like a map, and it was a joke of like different sections of New York City. Right smack in the Lower East Side, it just said on top of the little thing on top of it was labeled as aging punks. That's all it was called, aging punks. So I was like, yeah, like I said, while there is some young kids out there, especially in Brooklyn, that are doing punk rock and their punk bands and everything, there is definitely a gap. Like there was a gap, you know, in leaving that torch off to another generation of kids to come up and do it. And they're, you know, the good part about it is that they really are coming up with original stuff, like with less influence of older stuff, which is very interesting. But at the same time, there's no communication and community. So therefore, like, there's no real punk clubs anymore. There are no real places where bands could play and actually make a little bit of money, you know, at least to be able to afford their rehearsals, you know, and things like that. It's like there's no connection like that. And I feel, you know, I feel bad, you know, like Out of Shrunken Head, when they book punk bands from out of town, nobody comes because like there's no connection. Nobody knows who this band is, you know. And I'm like, there's no community like that anymore, where people are like, oh, this band's come from, even if they were underground back in the 90s, you knew who was coming, you know. And we didn't even have the technology we have now. So Yeah, so yeah, it's drastically different and it's hard to recognize. Yeah.
So like people aren't as like dedicated to the music or the scene, and like you feel like the younger people who are in the scene don't look like at older music or older influences much.
In many ways, I mean, you see a tad bit here and there, but yeah, they seem to be doing their own thing. I mean, I'm proud of them for doing it, but I wish there was more connect.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was coming up, most of the punks I hung out with were way older than me. I used to hang out with Jane County, I mean, and Dick Manitoba, and from the Dictators, and like all the old schools that were still here, and we were still together.
Dictators, I listened. They're like old school. They were all Jewish too, and they had like the Jew fro. Like I'm Jewish too, but like the Dictators, and like they had the Jew fros and everything.
yeah. That was the '70s, baby.
Yeah.
The '70s. But yeah. So I'm like, like these kids are doing their own thing, and there's not really as much of a connection, and I wish that there was. And I think with that connection would be community, more places to play. I think if the clubs had paid us better in the '90s, that some of these bands would have gone on to like getting a little bit of money to maybe opening their own space, maybe a record label or something like that. There's not a lot of that going on anymore. Not a lot of places for a punk band to get signed, not a lot of places for a punk band to play, let alone having to work a job and like keep your band together or like squat or whatever you're trying to do. There's really no connection anymore, not like it used to be.
And do you think that some of that is like the internet? Because like maybe because like people just put stuff out on Bandcamp, like they're less focused on like shows or community as much. Maybe there's like a disconnect, even though like just like with the internet, like it's less in person and everything.
I'm not one to say because I'm not like an internet analyst, but I can say this much. I would imagine with all that going on, with information at your fingertips, that you'd be more likely to get involved. That I would imagine that to be the direction of something like that. If you have it at your fingertips, which was really hard to get, which in a sense, like that did mean something. You had to work to get it, but you would think with the amount of information that people are receiving, there would be more ways to connect, but I guess you could be right. It could be having the opposite effect,
And how did people, like for people who don't know, like how did people find out about like underground bands or bands that weren't played on the radio, like when like there wasn't the internet and things like
literally word of mouth, paper, lots of papers and flyers, littered the streets of St. Mark's, littered the telephone poles, you couldn't even see a telephone pole anymore. You couldn't see it. It was wrapped up in like graffiti and flyers and papers. And back then, we had a lot more clothing stores. We'd have tons of flyers. We had fanzines everywhere. Somebody was doing, people were always busy doing something. And of course, word of mouth, So that's how
that kind of made the community more involved, I guess, right? Because people were like writing out things or like writing out articles or putting out zines.
Oh yeah, there was
a lot trading, right? Tape trade, like people would trade. Was that a thing too?
Yeah, trading was a thing as well. Yeah, trading was a thing as well. Clothing markets. A lot of them were run by old school punks. Like the clothing markets in the Lower East Side, stuff like that, trying to get rid of their old gear, or trading in their old gear for other gear, stuff like that. Records and things like that. Down at ABC in the Rios, they used to sell records down there like crazy, things like that, But yeah, I mean, like it was an active and very involved community. It seemed like everybody wanted to do something. If you weren't in a band, then you were possibly a promoter, And we had a lot of that, especially in like Coney Island High. You have a lot of promoters. I have to say, like in the '90s, I have to give credit to all the girl punks, man. All the riot girls, man. They really held it together. If it wasn't for them, there wouldn't have been a scene. They were the ones who were doing most of the parties and promoting and doing stuff like that. So.
And that was the new style to come out, right? Like Bikini Kill, and that's the main band. I know there was like in the Riot Girls and there were some others too.
Yeah, but they were very active in like promoting shows and like getting people to come out and having nights of their own that was specifically geared towards punk and like post-punk and like alternative music.
What was your opinion of grunge? Like,
I like Nirvana, especially early Nirvana. When I compare like say Pearl Jam to Nirvana, I'm like, it seems like two different genres of music. I don't know why Pearl Jam is grunge and so is Nirvana. Yeah. That doesn't make any sense to me. So if you're talking about grunge like Nirvana, yes, I definitely dig that kind of stuff. Pearl Jam, wasn't so much into. They just sounded like an alternative REM type kind of band to me, you know. So
Yeah, I guess I guess what you're saying is like, you know, punk doesn't really have one distinct sound. It's a lot of different.
it's a
Like,
lot of different sounds,
yeah,
but we've all heard that fucking Pearl Jam sound before, you know. We already
exactly.
it's been done before, you know. It wasn't
Yeah.
like
Well, it's more just like I guess I would call it like classic rock or something at this point. It's not really like
yeah,
there's not like a rawness to it really.
right. But yeah, I loved grunge, you know. I mean, at least it was something in the '90s, and it was a subculture movement, and it was something for the kids to get involved with, you know. It was Seattle sound, you know what I'm saying? That's their sound of punk, you know. So yeah, and I expect punk to be like that from different parts of the world, you know.
Yeah,
I watched a documentary not too long ago, well, a while ago, about like Indonesian punk, punk in Japan, punk in China, you know, punk in different parts of Asia. Really interesting shit, even in Africa, you know, because there's a huge skating culture going on, and it's bringing in the punk music with it, you know, in places like Ethiopia, you know.
yeah, that's kind of neat because it's like that kind of shows like that's what neat about like alternative subcultures or like punk or something like that is like somebody like in a totally different culture could find it because they don't totally relate to the mainstream of whatever their culture is.
Right,
So it's
and
like, and then in that effect, you kind of see everybody's like human and is like one or everything. Like you don't, it's hard to see him as like the stereotypes or whatever. I think that could kind of break down barriers, like that kind of shared interest.
yeah, yeah. I like the idea of breaking down walls. I can't stand walls. I don't like to be trapped behind one, and I don't want to be on the outside of one. You know?
So you also got into like synth music and
Mm-hmm.
like industrial and other genres like that, right? So
Mm-hmm. Definitely,
and
definitely.
that connects to punk as well.
Yeah, yeah. For me, it wasn't too far off the family branch, you know. So I was like, I like to dance, and I like 4/4 music, and I want as a DJ, you know, I want to be broader, you know. I don't want to be just with one thing. I want to be broader and be able to do different things in different styles of DJing, which is like beat matching and things like that. Industrial is my favorite to go to because it's aggressive, pissed off, angry, dark, you know, dystopian, you know, and I love all that.
And how did you gravitate like once you were done like doing the band? Like how'd you get into being the DJ from there?
Well, actually, while I was in the band, from time to time I would DJ, but it wasn't something I took seriously until after I lost the band. Because honestly, I mean, that was my little baby, and I felt like Tom Hanks at the end of fucking Castaway when he was standing at that road and he was looking down these like 4 different roads and he didn't know which way to go. That's where I was after I lost my band, literally, you know. And so I decided, well, why don't I really take DJing seriously? At least I'll be working with myself and not 4 other assholes with their own egos and like, you know, whatever other problems they came with, you know. So DJing was the move for me, and I started up. I mean, I remember one of my first gigs was at uh, Kimbra. What's her last name? Kimbra Fala. Yes, Kimbra Fala from the Voluptuous Horror Karen Black, the lead singer from one of my first DJing gigs live outside of being at home was with 2 tape decks and a mixer at her house, and it was kind of a disaster because I don't think they liked what I was playing, and it was a sobriety party, and I brought tons of beer with me, and like I didn't know that, and like so like they must have been like, yeah, what the fuck is this, you know? But anyway, that was one of my that, that was one of my first, and yeah, from there I took it from there. You know, I started making mixtapes and selling them in the Lower East Side, you know, and with things like that, doing like industrial music and things like that, you know. Yeah, and I just kept with it. But one of my most residential gigs, my first residential gig, would be at Motor City, the Motor City Bar on Ludlow Street. Yeah, on Ludlow Street, and I did that for years over there. And that was a great bar. If you were ever going to play anywhere, that was a great place. That was a great place to be. A great time in the '90s punk history. That's punk and rock and roll, you know. So.
And I guess it got more. Would you say is it less involved DJing than it used to be? Because like you used to have to use like tapes and.
Uh, I mean, I've got. I'm a technology buff at this point. Um, I've got so much at my fingertips right now. Like back then, it was mixed tapes, but I don't have to do that anymore. I record them and I could send them out online. Put it up on SoundCloud for people to download if they want, and so like technology has made a lot of things like that really much simpler and cooler. Before I would have to make a mixtape, get the tape, drag my ass into the city, into Manhattan, drop the damn thing off, get paid for it. That in itself was like 3 hours. Not including the mix itself. If I had to get something done today, I don't have to do that. But
I know you showed me there was like a program you use too for DJing, right? And you said you have to own all the music in order to DJ.
yeah, you have to buy the music. In other words, you can't stream it.
Yeah.
You have to buy it. It has to be stored on your computer and owned by you. Yeah.
And there was like a program too, right?
It's called Record Box, and you can stream, but only through certain services. Like it's a part of the system. Like you can pick a streaming service which gives you stuff that you can play. Like they take the protection off of it so that you can play it, but you're doing it from a stream. But you have to be subscribed to that service. It integrates with the program. There's several different services that integrate like that. So if you have stuff on your computer and you have a large variety of stuff that's cloud-based, and you can DJ that all together in one sitting. I don't have those services right now. I think they're kind of nice to have, but I think they missed the mark on like punk and industrial. It's more for pop culture.
That's it. They don't have a lot of options for like more.
Right. Like they don't know like what an industrial band is.
But can you like burn records onto it, or is there a way to do that, or like put CDs on, like stuff you have in your old collection, or there's not a way really to do that anymore?
What, to burn a mix?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can burn a mix if I want to. What I would do is pre-record it and then take that and then burn it to CD.
And like if you have something on vinyl, is there a way to get it like in the digital?
Yes. Yes, it's called DVS. And that's a system that most modern DJ programs will take. What it does is there's two ways you can do it. You can if you're going to use DVS comes with this vinyl that has basically nothing on it except a code. It's like a SMPTE code, and it's a code. It's 2 pieces of vinyl, and the music that you're getting, the source of the music is actually from your collection on your computer. So you're not changing the vinyl. You're not taking one record off and putting it on. You're just changing it through the system, and it gives you the feel, and it allows you to control and operate the system itself through vinyl. In other words, your turntables become the remotes, and so you can do it that way. And there's another way where you can just take an analog turntable and use an A to D converter and put it into your computer and mix that way. But it's called DVS, and like you could you can use turntables to they have to be like USB turntables or whatever, and you can DJ with vinyl if you want. DJ like a vinyl DJ if you want.
Yeah, because I kind of wanted to learn like. I thought it'd be fun to like do some DJing, but I see like it's a lot. You showed me like it's a lot to, because I kind of wanted to do like a synth wave theme song or like different like synth genres. And
right. That's another thing. I like to do new wave and like what they call minimal synth and like electro wave. I like doing stuff like that. So I've been collecting a lot of that stuff lately, and I've been using it and mixing it in on my industrial nights. Like on my broadcast nights.
Yeah, and you still like a lot of the new artists out there. Like you still find artists out there you like and everything they're new.
Yeah. I take what I like out of it. I mean, I'd say if I have 10 records, hopefully 1 out of 10, I might be like, hey, this is doable. I can actually play this, and I'll be cool with it. Even at low numbers like that, I'm cool with it. I'm cool with open to new music. New artists and stuff like that. Some stuff is just trash. but totally open to like new stuff.
So are there ways like you've changed or your outlook on things have changed, or maybe like what punk means for you, or like what your philosophy has it changed like through your experiences and people you met, or just like as the years went on?
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm not going to kid myself. I'm an aging punk. That's all there is to it. I am an aging punk. You know, it's not getting any better for me at all. So I want to take maybe the next few years of like DJing and do the best that I can. You know, like go out with a bang if I can. You know, I don't plan on doing this forever. You know, so I just want to. Right now, I'm more busy seeing how far I can take this, and if I can actually make a connection with the younger generations. You know. So I think in January I'm going to approach a couple of friends of mine who may have the financing to maybe help market me a little bit better. You know, if they're willing to make an investment in me, then maybe I can use that for better marketing, you know, and try to reach a younger crowd. Maybe it'll open up my work schedule so I have more time to do what I really like to do rather than what I have to do. You know.
Oh, so like you kind of want to DJ like other places?
Oh, yeah, I do. Yeah. Uh, Especially concert venues and stuff like that, which, you know, it's not unusual that I do a concert, but there's not as many
You know,
concerts.
actually, there's a place, the Meat Locker here, like in New Jersey, in Montclair. I could picture they would probably they'd be cool with you like doing something like that there.
Really.
Yeah, because it's like a punk club, and they have like the people who run it. I mean, it's like lately it's been a lot of like grindcore metal shows, but like they also have like punk shows. It's kind of like a CBGB like club, and sometimes they have other things there like open mics. I could see like if you wanted to do a punk DJ night there, I think that's be something they do probably.
That sounds excellent, you know.
Yeah.
That does sound excellent. But it's hard, you know, because I'll go out to a place like that and people out there won't know who I am, so I may not get a crowd. I'm certainly not going to get a fucking, God, a New York crowd to get out there. I mean, for Christ's sakes, they get pissed off having to travel across the bridge, you know, to another borough, let alone get them to come to
What I've noticed
city.
about that place is it seems to have like a regular group of people that like kind of go there. So like if they see something's going like
Nice.
yeah.
That's good. If they have a nice built-in crowd, it's, you know.
Yeah, maybe I'll send you like I'll see like where to contact. I know there's like two people who run it.
Right.
Like ask those. Yeah.
Right.
But like has like your politics or your views about what punk means, at least for you, like changed as you've gotten older?
Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, like I said, I mean, the very act of being punk was political to me to begin with. It wasn't what you said or what you necessarily everything that you believed in, but the defiant act of being a punk in a society where people expect you to go with the trend. That in itself, that's what punk means to me. You know, that's what it is. You know, more than anything. And you know, like politics aside, I mean, as a progressive, that doesn't necessarily. I mean, anybody can be a progressive. You don't have to be a punk rocker to be a progressive. You know, so I'm like, that's my politics. This is punk rock. You know.
OCB is like two separate things. Like the politics.
It's not complete. No, it's not completely separate. I mean, you can incorporate who you are as an individual into punk rock, so you can speak your politics through punk rock if you want. You know, but but you know, as it should be treated as an art form, as a way of expression. That's for me. That's pretty much what it is. So, an act in it, like I said, it's a defiant act to be a punk in the first place. I think, you know, you literally are going up against the grain. Your parents may not necessarily understand or know why you're getting involved in that, and that in itself might be rewarding. You know, like seeing your parents pissed off all the time. You know. Or like, you know, your family members, they're going to be like, oh, well, why are you dressed that way? Why do you look that way? What does that shirt mean? Like, what is that? Like, what's that music you're listening to? Why are they so angry? You know? Or like, yeah, that is politics in and of itself. And so the politics haven't changed for me when it comes to punk rock. Punk rock politics is definitely your individuality, who you want to be, you know?
And do you think like there's people who are like punks like in their way of thinking and their philosophy, but they're not as into like I remember there were even like some bands like the Dead Kennedys didn't really dress punk and stuff.
Yeah.
Like so some like less about the fashion too, and less.
Yeah, I mean, punk rock is not a fashion show. So I'm like, you know, you can dress however you want, and still be punk rock. Yeah, I mean, shit. That's why, you know, as I get older, the one thing I will say that's changed for me about getting older is that I'm trying less and less to judge a book by its cover, because I'm learning, you know, that like a lot of people think like that, think like punk rockers and would-be punk rockers, and never been exposed to the music. I'm like, now there's a person that I want to. Here, you want to listen to this? Because like they don't even know that they're already there. So
Yeah, like on the surface, you might not think you have things in common with them, but they have a lot of the same ideas. Like,
yeah, and then you want to break that record out and be like, oh, you know what you might like? I'm like, that's my whole thing, man. Recruiting people, recruiting them. I want to recruit them.
And have you done that a lot of autos? Like brought new people to it? Like that's where you mainly did.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, have you done that a lot of autos? Like bringing new people into it and stuff.
You know what? I've seen a lot of people come and go, but I mean, like through DJing, I've had a lot of people come and just stick around, and they just end up liking it, become a part of everything, and start getting to know people and things. So yeah, that's happened a lot.
Yeah. And does anyone here want to ask a question or like join it? There's just some other people here. I don't know if anybody wants to. Danny just asked, "What's your favorite band from the '90s?"
From the '90s, local or larger?
Rock and roll, punk band.
What do you say, Buffalo or?
From where?
I think he said the name of a band.
Yeah, I wanted to know if she meant like local or much on the more national.
Oh, he said local or like much on the note, like big, I guess. So like
big band from the '90s. Okay, well, I'm gonna give this band a lot of credit because I'm sorry, I just think that they make incredible music. I think that Rancid was amazing.
Rancid?
Yeah, I really think they were amazing, doing everything from like ska to like punk and like mid-tempo punk to hardcore punk to like ska, using wind sections and bringing in different artists, like having like Jamaican rappers in their music, and like, wow. I mean, I got to give it from the boy from Op Ivy, because I loved Op Ivy back in the day, all to Rancid. I'm like, he's a pretty talented motherfucker.
Yeah, that's actually something that like there was actually like a tie between like reggae and punk, like had like I know a bit of like connections like too. Like that's what made me think of Or like I know that like they hung out with each other a lot, like the skinheads and like the like people who played reggae.
Well, yeah, like the trad skins, like the traditional skins, the rude boys. They hung out with punks. We all hung out together and everything. And then there was this whole bullshit of like white supremacist fucktarts, that would consistently get their ass kicked if they ever came around. So like in New York, it wasn't a thing. But when we saw them in New York, they got their asses beat. But I'm like, which was good. But I'm like, back then everybody was together and the music was together too. It wasn't uncommon to come out, hear some hardcore punk, hear some mid-tempo, everything from 70s punk to 90s punk to like ska, reggae, a little bit of like post-punk, things like that, and Riot Girl, all in one night. Such a great time back then.
Yeah, I like that. There's kind of like that diverse, like not only like diverse, like the people who are into it, but like diverse, like in the sound too, like the way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Everything. I mean, my God, everything from Susie and the Banshees to fucking, like Exploited, and everything in between.
Yeah, and my friend Harrison has a question.
Sure.
Yes, I was wondering if you could tell Sean and I a funny mosh pit story, or a injury, or a crazy story.
Oh my God! All right. Well. Okay. Twice, I had my nose and my arm broken in a ministry pit.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite. Ministry, right?
Yeah. Now early in the early '90s, I was at the Pyramid. No, was it at the Pyramid? No, it was at the Marquee, and Ministry was at the Marquee, and the Ministry was playing, and man, I was in the mosh pit, and somebody elbowed me something fucking terrible. Knocked me off my ass onto the floor. So I ran into the bathroom.
I've been there, man. I've been there.
So I ran into the bathroom, and I'm talking about a face full of blood. It looked like somebody. I looked like Carrie, like
Couldn't
somebody
breathe
dropped
out of
a
your
pin.
nose and shit.
Yes, it was just pouring and
Yeah.
pouring and pouring and
I
pouring, right,
understand.
dude? So I just stood there for rinsing, and it kept pouring. You know, I knew eventually it was gonna stop. You know, but I didn't have time. The song was on, the music was on. I was like, fuck the next record. I want to hear this record. Man, I just jammed it up and ran right back out there into the pit. So
Hell yeah.
So that's the first time. The second time, I was at the Pyramid, and again, they were playing Ministry, and I got into the small pit that was there, and I slipped and fell, being the old man that I am right now, and broke my fucking arm.
Danny has another question. Wait, come over here. Hold on. Yeah.
Okay, do you do like piercings or
He's showing tattoos. Yeah. Yeah.
Tattoos.
And he has piercings too. Yeah.
what makes you like better?
I'm sorry?
She wants to know what you like better, piercings or tattoo.
Oh, that's a hard question. I worked for Andromeda Body Piercing in the 90s, from, I think it was 91 to, no, 92 to about 2000. I worked at a place called Andromeda Body Piercing and Tattoos. And so I was a part of that whole culture, you know, everything. It was called Andromeda Body Piercings. The other side was called Cassiopeia. And yeah, we were like sort of like a small chain from the West Village to, you know, St. Mark's. And it's hard to say what I like, because like everything at that time was available to me. If I wanted a tattoo, I got it. If I wanted a piercing, I got it. And, you know, if I had, you know, if I hadn't started doing construction at some point in my life, I'd probably still have all the piercings I used to have, which was like, you know, used to have the Earl, you know, I had like 2 spikes out of my nose like this. I had 8-gauge bullhorn, you know, but I had to take a lot of that stuff out because I had to work construction. You don't want that kind of dirt inside your piercings. So like I took a lot of that stuff out, but I loved getting piercings. I hated the healing process. I still want to. So if I'm going to figure out which one I like more, it's probably tattoos at this point, because like they're just something. Yeah, because they're just something. There are things that need to be done. I need to finish this up. You know. I'm only almost fully sleeved. There's just certain sections that are missed out, and I want to, you know, I want to get that done. You know.
And the tattoos, like, are they like significant parts of your life, like symbols?
Oh yeah, every part of them symbolizes something. You know, like for instance, this brick wall. You know. That's when I told you I don't like walls. I don't like being behind one. I don't like being on the outside of one. I prefer mirrors because it makes you look at yourself, you know. But yeah. So that was like, this was like this is like it's like entrapment. It's the same thing with the spider web. You know, it's entrapment, being trapped, like not being able to get out of a situation that you're in. You know. And a lot of during that time, economically and like being on and off the streets, I felt trapped. I felt like no matter what I could do, I can't get myself out of this. You know, so yeah, a lot of them mean something, like from where I come from, you know.
And what can you say about like homelessness in America, like, and I guess specifically New York City, like just from your experience with it, like?
Let me tell you something. When you're down, man, people love to kick you. I can tell you that right now. People love to fucking kick you when you're down, man. Even when they see that you are trying to pull yourself up, they will fucking pick up their foot and be like, just because you're there already, they'll do that. You know, and that's what I've learned. I've learned that people will step on you while you are down, like in the pits, you know. So, that being said, if you're ever on the streets and you don't have ID or anything like that or whatever, it's a long road. It's a long road back. It really is. A lot of people don't get that. It shouldn't even be called homelessness. It should just be called houselessness, you know, because like a home is a concept, you know, it's a construct, you know. What these people need are houses. You put a roof over their head, and they did this experiment in Utah, where they took homeless people in the Salt Lake City area, and they built the housing for them and put them inside, just to see what happened. These people had no jobs or nothing. 70% of the people who are housed managed to find work, and now they have bought into those homes. They're buying their homes, put a mortgage down.
Well, that makes sense. Like that gives you like more of like a motivate, like because otherwise, I guess it feels kind of well. There's also a lot of barriers too, but there's also like you don't feel as hopeless, I guess, then too. Then maybe that.
Yeah, well, having a roof
Yeah.
over your head and being able to take a shower, well, that's going to do
Yeah.
some things for you. You know,
Yeah.
that'll definitely motivate you, especially if you want to keep it. So, like, it was an experiment to see what happens. 70% of the people who are housed kept them.
Oh wow.
You know, and I was like, there it is, right there. And then, a lot of the homelessness in that Salt Lake City area disappeared because of this program, and it all came back. But it didn't come back from Salt Lake City homeless people. It came back because other homeless people in America found out about this program and started storming Salt
Oh
Lake
wow.
City. So like now they're back to where they were, because
Oh.
like everybody went there. So that's, if we do something like that, it has to be more on a national level,
Yeah.
'Cause when people
Yeah,
find out, they're
definitely.
gonna go. Yeah. So, but yeah, when I heard about it, I was like, damn, I wish they had something like that in New York when I was homeless, But yeah, the road getting off of it was really, really tough, even when you're young.
And what you said, people step on you. Was it like people? Was it like who? Was it like wealthier people? Like this, like is it like a, or was it like people who other
Yeah.
people on the street, or like what kind?
Well, yeah, there's a rat race on the street like you wouldn't believe. So yeah, on the street, there's a hierarchy. So and some people are doing some guys are better dumpster diving than others. And so that's just the way it is. But yeah, these were just the average Joe, the average Jane, okay, who, because you don't have a roof over your head, because they get angry. They see you're out there, and the first thing they figure is that you didn't pull up your bootstraps. You know that bullshit, right? You didn't pull up your bootstraps, so that's why you're in the position that you're in. And I have to bust my ass paying this rent, and here you are panhandling me for $1. That's how they feel. But they don't understand the complexities of that. They don't understand the road to there. They're not understanding that anything can happen to them. A sickness in the family. A few days you need off of work. One thing you do wrong at work can put you in the doghouse, just where I am.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, like
these were,
the medical bills you were talking.
yeah,
Like, yeah.
yeah. And I'm like, this roof you have over your head, you're barely making it. Your refrigerator's empty. You got the roof, but you ain't got nothing in your fridge. I'm like, I know what you're going through, but I'm like, you got 1 foot out on there with me. So like, me, I'm not like that, dude. I mean, the only thing I know is that when I have a little bit of something to give, I do. I'm not going to step on somebody who's down like that. But
And
yeah,
did you see? But did you also see generosity, or like people showing kindness at the same time, or aside from like seeing like? the
I
pool
have,
just in the-
I have, especially if they wanted something, from you. I have. There used to be this lady. Her name was Diane. She was like an evangelistic, like nut job, and she'd make this congregation for the homeless, and she would feed you, but you'd have to sit through the sermon, and the whole sermon was all about her telling you about your sinful ways.
Okay.
So you had to sit through that, so you can get a hot dog at the end of the sermon.
Okay. So I guess it was kind of like, oh, I get a meal, so I'm okay with hearing about how terrible I am. I'll just,
Yeah, there we go. Repent.
So what when you I'm guessing like you met like a lot of other people, I guess, who were homeless too.
Oh yeah, a
So,
lot
like,
of people my age, a lot of kids coming in from out of town. The crusty kids or whatever. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you. A lot of those kids had a home to go back to. I'm not
they just
sure.
didn't like the home, I guess.
I guess they didn't like home. I guess they liked, freight jumping and subway surfing and whatever else. It is a very free life.
But would you say there was a common thing that like causes homelessness, or like the like a common thing, like common factors that like contribute to it?
Yeah, being broke.
Okay.
Yeah, being broke. That'll pretty much do it. I think if you have money and you can afford to stay someplace, you probably end up doing that. It's much nicer than like having to worry about a rat crawling up your blanket.
Well, and prices are going up for stuff,
Everything.
housing and everything.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So I guess maybe any final thoughts or things you'd like to end with before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, whoever's out there listening, it would be really, really cool if you come down and see me DJing. How about that? That would help.
Yeah, Thursday nights at Otto's.
Yeah, Thursday night, Thursday punk rock happy hour.
Yeah, East 14th Street, right?
Yeah, East 14th Street between A and B.
Yeah, they're all saying, "Oh, let's go." They all want to go. So.
Yeah, you got that, and then you can also tune in, check out my website, djpitterpat.com, and you can also tune in for the broadcast that I do as well. So yeah, check out my my website and like.
She wants to, well, he said on his website you can hear the podcast, and you post it on social media too, right?
Yes, yeah. You could on djpitterpat.com gives you all the information that you need on when the next broadcast will be coming up. So.
All right. Well, yeah. Thank you for coming on. I think this has been a good.
No, thank you for having me, Sean. It's been a minute since I've seen you, and hopefully you come down. If you come down, shout on me. You know that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I've always enjoyed your punk nights and stuff, and then you show me like new bands I haven't heard and stuff. Like I think one time I was like telling you bands like I heard and stuff, and they're like, "Well, you're like, what you should be saying is, what is this you're playing?" Like, Yeah. All right.
Yeah. I like it when people. I like it when people are a little more interactive. Like they're like, yeah, who's this or who's this or who's this? Because I'm more than happy to be like, yo, let me tell you about this band.
Yeah.
I'll tell you about these guys.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, if for those who want to keep updated with future episodes of Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff, listen on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts, or also social media. Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff, or just Sean Kneese, SeaNkneese, and that's about it for this episode. We'll catch you on the next one.